Homeschooling is an identity and it's absolutely amazing. Hey guys, I'm trying to make a video.
What is going on right now?
I'm joking. Hi guys, my name's Sophia. I'm the 1 in 1.3. Welcome to the family. For those of you who are new to my channel, this channel is based on homeschooling questions and everything about education. I've been homeschooling since 2013 and I'm on my 8th year running. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about 10 things I wish I knew before homeschooling. What's one thing? I think one thing I'd say was probably the guilt. The guilt of homeschooling. You always feel, I don't know about you, but I always feel guilty about something. I remember when the kids were younger, I was always feeling guilty about sports days because I hadn't been underneath a curriculum like the ACE at that time, and I felt like sports days was something that I loved as a child. If you saw my video over here, where I talked a little bit about me, I spoke about the fact that I was really fast running in school. So the fact that my kids were not involved in sports days, it made me feel so guilty. Another thing I felt guilty about was assemblies. I'd not seen my children do end of year assemblies anymore. I was always thinking, oh no, I'm gonna miss the end of school plays for assembly. But then when I kind of navigated the two things about the fact that they were the only two things I missed about school for my children and looked at the benefits of what I enjoyed about homeschooling, it kind of weighed up. And also now that my kids are under the ACE curriculum and we go to Teach Camp and something called ESE, which is the European Student Convention, my children don't miss out anymore because they get to do sports days with other children who are home educated and go to Christian schools around the UK. And they don't have assemblies though, but we still have achievement ceremonies where they get to have medals and things like that. But guilt.
Assemblies and Teach Camp.
Yeah?
Yeah. And you can get certificates for ICT.
And Tiago from the Morrison family homeschool.
Well, there you have it. So there's no reason for me to be guilty anymore because my daughter, I'll pay her later. I'm joking. My daughter's obviously she's told us.
You do really need
I didn't
pay me though.
I didn't tell you to say that. That was your own like
Yeah,
volunteer
No, but you need
information
to pay me for my work.
there. Yeah, that's something else. It's yesterday's work. So yes, there's no guilt left anymore because obviously we get to do a lot of that stuff in homeschool, so we're not really missing out on anything really. What else? The responsibility is real. Now, when you start home educating your children, you're taking on full responsibility for their learning. So obviously if you send them to school, you can always blame the teachers or the school if things don't necessarily go right. So just say that your son didn't pass an exam or something like that happens, you can always go to the teacher and question them, like, what have you been teaching them? Like, you haven't given us enough homework, things like that. When you're homeschooling now, you've taken on full responsibility for your child's learning, and that responsibility can weigh quite heavily on you, and it can be quite daunting at times because you realise that it's all in your hands, and if things go badly, you don't really have anyone to blame except from yourself, and your children also have a level of responsibility too. That can be quite daunting, and it's something that I hadn't really thought of that much when I began home educating my children. People judge you more harshly. For example, you could be a parent who went to every parent evening on your own when your children were younger, but the minute you start home educating, some family members may want to find out more about how the kids are doing and want to see reports and progress reports and information because now you're the head teacher, you're the executor, you're the caretaker. They want you to give them actual physical evidence that your children are doing well. You don't actually spend a lot of time at home. So what I found as a home educator is that when the kids were younger in particular, I found that it was quite hard to schedule time when we're actually at home doing studying, because what I found was I was always taking them out. There was always like different offers or different suggestions about going to other places, like there'd be like different classes taking place. I would be out of the house a lot, going to like Kew Gardens for homeschooling groups, taking my children to swimming lessons, taking them to creative writing classes, taking them to see their friends at homeschool groups and things like that. That actually the day got so busy that I hardly ever actually was at home. So one thing to be warned, one thing to think about is how you schedule your day and how you schedule your activities, because sometimes what you find is it takes a lot more to do actual academics because children are learning all the time and they've had all these wonderful experiences that you tend to find that you're not really staying home as much to do study, which is quite nice. I think sometimes, especially as a Christian home educator, you might think that your children are going to make a decision for Christ just because they were raised in a Christian home, just because you spent more time with them at home, teaching them through the Bible, teaching them the ways of the gospel. But at the same time, you have to remember that your children are still children and they'll make a decision about what they're going to follow, even as they grow older. You can set the foundation right for them and you can do as much as you can to teach them the right foundation, the right core of your beliefs. But ultimately, at the end of the day, your children are responsible for themselves. And as they get older, like into pre-teens and things like that, all you really can do as a parent is give them enough so that they can make the right choices as they get older. So don't think that just because you're home educating your child within your religion, whatever religion that may be, it doesn't necessarily mean that your child will make the same religion and make the same choice that you did in terms of their faith. The cost of homeschooling. Now this won't apply to everyone because some people are able to homeschool on a really tight budget and they do really, really well. I've actually got a video that I want to send out about how you can homeschool for free using the Bible by itself, or I've got a video already, and if you check over here, I've got a video about how you can homeschool using national curriculum, which is a little bit like a free type of resource that's online. There's also other sites like Ambleside Online, which also show you that you can homeschool on a really tight budget. However, what I found was home education can actually be quite expensive. It's almost like in between public school and private school. So it's like right in the middle down here, because obviously it depends on how much you invest in your children's education. But I found that I poured a lot into my children, into like music classes. At one point I had one child learning the violin, 2 children learning the piano, and 1 child learning the drums when they were younger. Also things like curriculum. I follow a curriculum called the ACE curriculum, and that is not cheap. I mean, the cost is, you can kind of see the costing and see if it outweighs other costing too, but I find that as the kids get older, you're spending money on different things, but you find that it can be quite expensive. Even being at home, for example, because you're at home all the time, your electricity bill will be higher, your gas bill will be higher, your water rates bill will be higher, your food shopping bill will be higher, because obviously you're at home a lot. I mean, you can be very careful. I do a lot of Dave Ramsey style finances, where you have to build up an emergency fund and things like that to help you look at your budget. But I do find that you have to really pay attention to costing, because you might want to buy more resources for your children. You might not want to have a budget on education, but I find you have to be very, very careful, because you have to be very, very careful, because you can lose quite a few coins with home education if you're not careful. Science. Now, what you need to recognise with home education, if your child is going to go into any science careers, it's really important that you plan out the science curriculum. Now, my eldest boy had always wanted to be a basketballer. For a long time he kept saying, okay, yeah, when I get big I want to be a basketballer. I thought he would be really good at history courses, because he's very, very good at history, very good at history in fact, but I thought he might go into something where he does like history A-levels or things like that. It's only when he got to year 11 that he decided, actually, I want to be a neurosurgeon. Now, to be a neurosurgeon, that means you need to have science. So had I known that he was more geared towards science when he was younger, I would have put a lot more into science lessons and getting a lot more of that knowledge base in there. Because obviously at home, he still can do science. It's not impossible to do it this way. But I think you need to really think about covering the 3 main cores, science, maths and English. Cover those 3 subjects if you want your children to go on to college or university. You don't have to. I mean, there's other children I know that are not necessarily doing any qualifications with their homeschool, and they're still going quite far in the areas that they want to work on. I'm not a professional in that field, so if you want to find out more about unschoolers or people who've done it that way, you might need to go to a different channel. But for me, I'm still very much about children getting qualifications when they leave their homeschooling. Even though my children won't get GCSEs, they'll be getting something called an ICCE. It's still very important to start at the top and then work your way back. So have a little think where your children might want to go and work your way back. So with science, make sure that your kids are covering all the different science experiments and different things like that, so that they really are equipped when they go to college. So for example, for me, we didn't do enough chemistry with my older boys. So now that I've got my younger 2, I'm making sure we do much more chemistry. Tiago, the second one, he wants to go into some kind of science field as well. So obviously the first one, unfortunately, sometimes it's a bit of trial and error, which is a bit annoying, because obviously he had biology really strong, but he didn't have very good chemistry skills when he went on to A-levels, and he found chemistry at A-levels very, very hard. So I'm just being honest with you, being very transparent with you, but I'm saying if you are homeschooling and you're homeschooling teens, make sure that you try and get those 3 cores in, maths, English and science, and make sure your science is covered at quite a high level, so that when they go on to A-levels, they won't find it challenging, especially if your child is kind of gearing towards that direction. Time. No matter how much time you think you have, time is really precious, and you will run out of time either way. Use your time carefully. Make sure that when the kids are younger, that you're playing with them more, that you're doing as much as you can when they're younger, because when they get to teenage years, they change their mind about what they like, the things that they're into, and you can kind of miss it. There was one thing that my daughter wanted to do when she was in year 2, and what it was, before she went on to, she left school in year 1, and she knew that when she was going to go in year 2, the children get to light the candles in assembly. So that's something that she kept talking to me about and saying, oh mum, I'm going to be lighting the candles. But obviously because she was homeschooled, she wasn't able to light the candles anymore. And I always said to her, don't worry, when we get home, we will do something where we can actually buy some special candles and you can light them for like breakfast. But I never did it. And then that's something really small and very simple. Sorry. My bright colours attracting the bees. Although it's something very, very simple, it's still something I never did. And obviously now that she's 14 years old, I can't be like, okay, Layla, let's go and get the candles so we can start lighting them, because I've missed that opportunity. So make sure that you don't miss out on any opportunities. Try to stick with your word and say what you say you're going to say, and make sure that you're investing your time wisely and just taking the time to really enjoy your children and to love them while they're young. The same issue that parents have whose kids are not going to, who are not homeschooled, is the same issue that homeschoolers have too. So make sure that you think about your time and use your time wisely. The fear of thinking your children want to go back to school. So again, this one over here, you may have children who really like homeschool, they love being with you, but they still worry or wonder about what's going on outside in school. And when my kids were younger, I used to always be concerned about the fact that, I'm not doing enough, why would they want to go back to school? But it's quite natural actually that could happen. So I want to put a little snippet here of my daughter. I was doing her hair when she was younger, and she was looking at a flyer about school, and she says, "Mummy, I want to go to this school." And my heart started beating so fast, thinking, oh my gosh, she wants to go to school.
I want to go in school. I want to go in school. Mummy, I want to go to this school.
Is it a new school?
This exciting new English French Church of England primary school opened in Harrow September 2015.
But it happens. And then my older boy, when he was about 10, he again was always thinking about his school and his teachers. So I decided to put him back in school, which, I don't really regret that decision, because I feel like it kind of got it out of his system, so that when the time came for high school, he wasn't really stressed about wanting to go to high school anymore, because he had got it out of the system. He saw his friends, he got all their numbers, and now if you ask him, he's quite happy being homeschooled, and he says he's so happy that he didn't go to high school, which is a good thing. But you can worry as a homeschooler that your kids want to go back to school, but don't worry if they do say that. It's the same with everything. You could have a child in boarding school who's not happy if that's the choice that the parents have made for them, and they might want to go to public school. You may have children who go to grammar school, they want to go to they want to be homeschooled. So as a parent, you've got to be the one to make those tough decisions, but it can be quite a tough one when your kids do say they want to go back to school. You can experience burnout. Now, I hadn't realised how much you can experience burnout when your children are being home educated. But what happens is you're constantly thinking about what it is that you need to cover with their syllabuses, what sort of character issues that you need to work on with the children. Your time is quite strained, especially as a single mother when you're also working at home as well as home educating your children. You're all living on one income. There's all that pressure that's on you that after a while, if you're staying up late, planning your lessons, getting up early in the morning to make sure everything's fine, you can experience burnout. And again, it's no different from other parents who maybe are working full time and then having to juggle taking their kids to school and bringing them back home again and doing the cooking and all these different things. But you can experience burnout, and I would say to you that if you do experience burnout as a home educator, just take a step back, reevaluate what it is that you're doing, and just don't worry about taking time out for yourself sometimes. But I think one thing that I wish I knew as a homeschooler is that you can experience that quite intensely, mentally as well as physically. But I've learned a lot since then. Obviously I've been doing it a long time now, so I know the things I can do better when this type of burnout occurs. Another thing I realised about home educating was that you become more intelligent and more clever. It's actually true. You get to learn things while home educating your children that you hadn't learned when you were in school. You also get to remember the things that you retained when you were at school. So for example, I'm trained as a primary school teacher and I'm qualified to teach maths up to primary level. That's okay, but when I did GCSEs, I only got a C in my GCSEs. However, I find that when my older children are learning about, Pythagorean's theorem and things like this, I'm able to remember things that I did from when I was younger, and I can still use those skills to teach my children. The same with you. Maybe when you're helping your children do their homework, you'll remember things from school that were good, or remember certain situations and scenarios that you were in that will also help you to teach your children. But I find that certain books that they read, I'm reading those books too, because we have lots of read aloud sessions where I would get them to read their books out loud to me even when they're older, so I can hear what it is that they're reading, I can see if there's any words that they're mispronouncing, things like that. But you get more clever in terms of your knowledge base because you're learning at the same time as your children. Discounts within the community. There's quite a lot of homeschool discounts within the community because homeschoolers tend to support each other in the best way that they can. So sometimes when you're buying something, you can always just ask if there's a discount code for home educators. For example, like a maths program called Conquer Maths, which I use quite a lot. You can join for Conquer Maths and just pay the parent subscription. But if you call them up, there's actually discounts that you can get just because you homeschool your children. Yeah, the discount's quite good.
Actually, no, yeah.
Why are you laughing at that? Sorry. was saying, homeschooling is amazing. That's one thing I didn't know. I knew that homeschooling would be a good thing. I wasn't too sure what it would be like going into homeschooling. But now that I've been doing it so long, I'm a bit like, oh, my kid's getting older soon. This one over here, she's in year 9, so she'll be going to A-levels in 2 years' time. I'm hoping she'll homeschool for longer, but she's chosen not to. Here.
I'm good, Mum.
What? Only okay. This one over here, he's planning to stay homeschooled until 18, which is wonderful, so I get him for longer. Our older boy, he went to A-levels at 16 too. But homeschooling is so amazing. It's like you have your own superpower, just telling people, yeah, I homeschool, I teach my kids at home. But you say it like, I don't know, it just makes me feel really happy to say that I homeschool my kids. It feels like one of my real good life achievements. I don't know why, but yeah, it's awesome. Homeschool is absolutely awesome.